communication.
In recent times, several outlets have been opened for dialogue to resolve issues during protests as officials address the nation to communicate certain key points that helped ease tensions.
This certainly has triggered discourse by communication experts on the role of strategic communication in resolving conflicts in Nigeria. Now, we may have some of them joining us to speak more on this today. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, the first for the week. I am Victor Azu.
And I'm Ian John. Welcome you to the program. It's a live broadcast on the network service of the NTA, and we're right here at the headquarters in Abuja. In a moment, we'll bring you newspaper review, and that's when Chukwudi Okoli will join us on set. But for now, we got Olajide Bello with us, and he's ready to hit us with the news. Olajide, good morning to you.
Good morning, Yenre. Good morning, Victor. Good morning, Nigeria. And here is the morning news. Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Dr. Folashade Yemieson, has laid the foundation of 216 units of housing projects under the Federal Integrated Housing Scheme in Abuja. This is in line with President Bola Tinubu's desire to provide quality and affordable housing for civil servants across the nation.
We understand that the earnings of civil servants is not much. So we try as much as possible to get the best quality for the minimum price. And you cannot get those opportunities anywhere else.
A devastating boat accident has occurred on River Rima along the Ndai axis of Wamaka local government area, Sokoto State, resulting in the loss of at least one life and sparking a massive search and rescue operation. According to reports, a boat carrying over 35 people capsized due to overloading, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. One body has been recovered so far, while 15 survivors managed to swim to shore. The victims, comprising elderly individuals and children, were en route to their farms when the canoe overturned. Emergency response teams, including the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, Sokoto State Emergency Management Agency, and the Red Cross, have swiftly responded to the scene to provide assistance and profile the victims. NEMA's search and rescue team, alongside local divers, are currently combing the river to locate the missing persons. Investigations into the incident are ongoing, with eyewitnesses' accounts and survivors' testimonies suggesting that overloading was the primary cause of the boat capsizing. The air component of Operation Delta Safe has increased its patrol, especially within the Niger Delta region, to locate illegal oil refining sites and destroy them. The latest is the destruction of 13 illegal refining sites and a vehicle in airstrikes near Obuzo and Koloma in Rivers State. The Air Force crew's swift action sent the criminals fleeing in disarray, while the aviators continued the patrol along the Trans-Niger pipeline, covering key points from Rumwekwe, Nkboku to Boni, and reported no unusual activity. The Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, has praised the air component for their dedication to curbing oil theft in the Niger Delta region. The Nigerian Senate is denying allegations suggesting that it is involved in determining its salaries or receiving special fiscal packages from the presidency. The claim was said to have reportedly surfaced during a visit by members of the House of Representatives to former President Olusegun Obasanjo. In a statement, Senate spokesman Yemi Adaramodu describes the allegation as an attempt to crucify the legislature and emphasizes that no senator receives financial patronage outside salary allocations from the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission. He clarifies that the constituency projects often linked to the legislature are merely suggested and nominated by senators following practices common in other democracies worldwide, adding that the executive arm of government, through its various ministries and agencies, is responsible for awarding contracts for the constituency project, which may vary depending on the number of constituencies. Adaramodu assured the public that the 10th Assembly remains responsible and responsive and reaffirms its commitment to upholding the economy and growth of Nigeria. In today's Global News, we take you to two significant events that mark new chapters in leadership for Rwanda and Bangladesh. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has been sworn in for a fourth term, solidifying his position as one of Africa's longest-serving leaders. Bangladesh's new Chief Justice Syed Rifat Ahmed takes oath of office, succeeding Justice Hassan Sadiq. And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Nyenri and Victor after this break.
In a land of peace and harmony, we cherish our freedom and unity. But around the world, we've seen how protests can spiral into chaos. What starts as a peaceful protest can sometimes end in anarchy, tearing communities apart.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days.
So those who experience it will run away from it.
Let's learn from these experiences. Let's value dialogue over destruction. Together, we can build a brighter future. Let's choose unity. Let's choose peace. Join us in the Peaceful Future Initiative, because together we can make a difference.
To prevent diarrhea and other diseases, especially in children, wash your hands with soap under running water, particularly after using the toilet. After cleaning your baby's bum, before preparing your baby's food, and before and after feeding your baby. If your child has diarrhea, give zinc tablets once a day, plus ORS every 4 hours, or frequently in small sips from a cup, so that your child will replenish lost nutrients and regain strength. Also, visit the nearest health facility to get treatment for diarrhea. This message is from the ANRIN Project, Federal Ministry of Health.
We're live in the open market for Epic 10X Challenge. My people, today I will show you how the power of new Epic 10X gives your toilet a better cleaning than bleach.
Than bleach?
Yes, so.
Impossible.
Toilets have stains which bleach cannot clean effectively. But Epic is thicker and sticks better, which gives 10X better cleaning versus bleach and kills germs.
Oh, wow.
You can now see that Epic is better than
in a world hungry for goodness, with a splash of golden Terra oil, a mom can transform a frown into a smile, make a lunch hour a happy hour. Change no thanks into yes please. Provide care when our nearest and dearest needs it most. And resolve family feuds without blowing a whistle. Providing tasty, nourishing family meals is all that matters. The world needs moms, because where there are moms, there is hope, happiness, and love. Golden Terra Oil, or pure love.
The new Milo 3-in-1 Milky and Creamy is truly milky and contains calcium. No need to add milk for that rich, creamy cup, which helps to nourish and energize your kids.
Milo! Bye, Mom.
He's going to play in this weather. Why did you let him go? He might fall ill.
And if he doesn't go out for practice, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from illness-causing germs during the rainy season, we use Dettol soap every day.
Dettol with germ defense gives you protection. Rainy season brings a lot of germs, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
A new edition of TV Guide is out.
This time, we got up close and personal with a transformational legislator, the Deputy President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Barrow Jibrin.
We've created a difference in terms of representation through interventions that have brought an unprecedented infrastructural development to my area.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more.
It is indeed a park of excitement as we take you through every aspect of life. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space.
TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
NTA Television College Jos, with a pedigree of producing indelible professionals in the media space and an affiliate of the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, for the award of degree in mass communication, calls on prospective candidates to leverage on the following courses it offers for 2024-2025 academic session. BSc Mass Communication, those with minimum admissible score of 180 and above who sat for the 2024 JAMB/UTME and direct entry, while 100 to 179 minimum admissible score can apply for the National Innovation Diploma NID in Film and Television Production, Broadcast Journalism and Television Engineering. For more inquiries, visit our website or call 0803 383 4343. Announcer, Registrar.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree. We sway in colors, we stand back in divine. We bet solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Each ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, strengthening unity. We know they carry life. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
This is still Good Morning Nigeria of the network service of the NTA. Now time for newspaper review.
Right, and that time has come. Chukwudi Okolubaja has arrived, and it's time for newspaper review. Good morning to you.
How are you? Good morning. Hope you had a nice weekend.
Well, I tried to. I hope I had as much as I had wanted.
It's okay. Yeah, Ray.
Good morning, Chukwudi.
Morning.
Good to see you.
How's the family?
Great.
Good.
All right, let's take a look at what the papers have on the front pages this morning. We'll begin with this Nigeria, and it leads with Obasanjo bombs National Assembly, government officials. The writers, it's wrong for legislators to fix their salaries, says ex-president. Most of those in office today should be in jail or executed. You're wrong, Senate spokesman. His government more corrupt, according to Bono Obla, and other comments right there. You want to pick up a copy of this Nigeria to see what's going on. Beside the masthead, Serap to Tinubu, probe $1.5 billion World Bank, $3 billion Chinese loans to 36 states and the federal government. All right, so away from that, beside the picture story, we have NDLEA recovers multi-billion naira drugs in nationwide raids. That's on page 26. And below that, we have multiple regulatory fees, levies, killing manufacturing firms in Nigeria, according to an NGO. Bank subscriptions, why many Nigerians are skeptical. Riders complain of not receiving dividends from previous shares Bank owners control majority shares through family and proxies. That's on page 4 of this Nigeria. Let's see the blueprint quickly now. The blueprint leads with presidency to governors. 573 billion naira payment. Second tranche COVID-19 NG Care Support Scheme. Rider Fund World Bank loan guaranteed by federal government, not grant. All right. Above that, NAF airstrikes destroy 13 illegal sites, 10 overhead tanks in Niger Delta. CBN disqualifies Wema Stanbic FCMB orders bids in retail Dutch auction. And yes, the trending story on the Olympics just ended. Sports Minister apologizes to Nigerians. All right, that's page 32. Above the masthead, food security, 10,000 agro rangers deployed in 19 states. And the FCT. Senate denies fixing own salaries, allowances, knocks ex-President Obasanjo over shocking claims. And away from Nigeria, Kagame sworn in for 4th term as Rwandan president. Victor.
All right, and on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot, it links with this story, well, parts of it taken by Yenre earlier, but probe 1.5 billion dollars World Bank and $3 billion Chinese loan. It has riders. Serap asks President Tinubu to probe use of the two loans from the two bodies. Says Tinubu should direct AGF Fagbemi, others, to promptly and thoroughly investigate. To find out how $1.5 billion World Bank loan by 36 states and Abuja for poverty reduction and social protection was spent, and also once investigated alleged mismanagement of the Chinese loans of $3.121 billion by the FG. All right, and then just below that major headline, Stop Dangote's Monopoly Now, Darkman Demands. That story is on page 6. And then some of these stories, like I said earlier, have been taken in other papers, but both carrying over 35 passengers capsizes in Sokoto, page 4. 3 teenage girls drown in Baju local government area of Jigawa, page 7. FCTA health workers employed in 2023 cry out over non-payment of salary. That's on page 20. And finally, TUC vehemently rejects FG's new public service rule, calls for reversal. That's on page 6. Chukode.
What is the grounds of the TUC that makes it
Perhaps
ask
we have
for
to
a reversal?
Look deeper.
And they are vehement about it all. Anyway, I'm sure they'll work it out. Let's go to more important issues. Obasanjo bombs NAS, government officials. I think that part of the problem concerning, what lawmakers take home is that they have not really put out somebody to speak for them concerning what they go. They still leave the thing, shrouded in mystery. Fine. If you say that the Revenue Mobilization Fiscal Commission, that mouthful is always a problem for me, that they fix your salaries. Fine. Nobody's contesting that. I think it comes to about 600,000 or so from what I read the other time. It is not the salaries that is the problem concerning what lawmakers take home. It is those allowances. And those allowances, I don't think they are given to them by the agency we talked about. But the first thing they should do really is not to allow this thing be shrouded in mystery. That is where the problem is. Let them be quite, clear about how much each person takes home at the end of the day. Then we can start a conversation about, I'm going to reduce and small now. Which one will do agriculture? Some kind of dialogue will start. But this catch me if you can attitude towards it is actually the problem, So let them work it out. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has always talked about leadership as being a problem for Nigeria. Those who are his critics will tell you, he's trying to draw attention to himself. The last time they had a talk shop, he mentioned leadership as the problem in Nigeria and Africa. Goodluck Jonathan was talking about electoral processes that are flawed and tribalism. I remember ethnicity. Obasanjo would always talk about leadership, and people would say, no, he's trying to draw attention to himself that he did so well. From 12 billion a debt, we owed Paris Club 36 billion naira or thereabout. Dollars came down to 12 billion, and they feel it was a masterstroke by his team, led by Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala then. So he keeps on referring to it. But the point at the end of the day is, you don't necessarily have to see an Obasanjo attracting attention to his tenure. Is he making a point? If he's making a point, are there certain things we can borrow from the time he was around and then work on it so that this country gets better at the end of the day? This brouhaha.
I think that should be the attitude, because when you say, oh, the moment somebody says, oh, this thing looks like it's wrong, and you say, what of you? It takes nobody anywhere.
It's practically nauseating. Not only me they do. What's the meaning of that? A code of conduct is what Africa needs to get out of the quagmire which it has inflicted on itself. We have to have a code of conduct and governance that makes everything transparent. You understand? But when you come, jobs are given to your cronies, you do things that don't quite show us that there is transparency. Africa has to come out of that situation. It doesn't help anyone at the end of the day. Well, that's my take on that.
Talking the TUC thing, when they said they vehemently refuse, it is because for the TUC that the new rules impose term limits on labor officers, on union officers, trade union officers.
Yes.
And then Festus Osifo is saying that the new rule contradicts existing provisions in the Labor Act and trade union constitutions, which typically provide for 4-year tenure per term.
Fine. So is the limitation that is the grouse there, is it? They want to become like Paul Kagame of Rwanda?
No, but if there is an existing 4 years, I think that they are saying what's wrong with what is existing in the books so far. So it's not about being Paul Kagame.
So why do we want to get cemented to a mentality? Mutation is a fact of life. What they should say is, this is why we think that the current system on the ground should go on. Give us good examples, not you're kicking against it for the heck of it, because then people begin to see selfishness in your attitude. I just mentioned Paul Kagame. Paul Kagame is a star to me in Africa, because they'll tell you a lot of things wonderful things have happened over there in Rwanda. But I keep on saying that a president who after 8 years has not prepared a successor is a failure. As far as I'm concerned, Africa has to rejig its method of living. I think so. Paul Kagame is a star. He effectively ended that, genocide, episode, between the Tutsis and the Hutus. Africa is grateful to him. The world is grateful to him. But after about 10 years, I cannot find somebody who can replace you. I'll tell you something is wrong with you. Our children must take over from us, Victor, whether we like it or not. You understand? Governor Sheyi Makinde must feel, exonerated now. It has been made clear that the 573 billion naira, which somebody said was a grant to them as governors, was actually a second tranche of COVID-19 NG Care Support Scheme. No problem. The clarification is very important. The messaging that comes from those in government is always a very important thing. We need to bring accuracy into some of the things we do. It actually prevents a lot of conflict. Many avoidable conflicts happen in Nigeria and Africa because we do not come out clearly about certain things. I don't think anyone intended any mischief concerning that. It was just the accuracy of the information being given out. That's how I look at it.
All right, and so much said already, Chukudi. Just to quickly mention the woeful performance of the Nigerian contingent at the Paris Olympics, and the comments we're hearing now from the minister about who is responsible for all of that. Looking at what played out in Paris, and the fact that we had some other African countries do great, going home with medals. A country, for example, like Jamaica, looking at the list of countries that were present for the Olympics, spending about less than 5% of what Nigeria spent. Nigeria actually spent about 12 billion naira, which amounts to 136 million naira for one athlete at Paris Olympics, and yet
you miss part of the point anyway, because the officials and all of those, the usual jamboree.
Anyways, is it supposed to be a jamboree? And to think that the 12 billion naira is taxpayers' money.
Yes.
All right, and of course, a lot of Nigerians would have expected at least one medal, whether a bronze or whatever.
You have just hit the nail on the head. If they had come back with a silver, maybe
you
we'll say,
analyze it.
But the point is this: my own take in all of this is, are we not likely to hear the same thing 4 years from now? Look, I started hearing about storage facilities for farmers when I was in primary 4. That's 1968. Storage facilities for farmers is still being talked about in this country. It is that inertia, deliberate, 2 steps forward, 4 steps backward, that is our problem. What is it that is really holding us back? And if you look at it, Victor, you're going to find out that it is the human beings that run these things that are still the problem. Then they come out in the marketplace and they're preaching something different. I talked about the other time, an Interpol officer, I saw them on another TV station. Every other person was talking about how to fight terrorism and all that. You know what he said? He said Nigerians should become more God-fearing. What is happening in the fight against insurgency is not right. He was not talking kinetic and non-kinetic. He was talking about human attitude. So you get to see a lot of people who come out in the open, say one thing, they go back into the shadows, they do something different.
And it's completely sad. I think it is better we stay away from such competitions than having so much money go down the drain. because this 12 billion naira is almost twice the amount budgeted for the entire Ministry of Science and Technology for this year.
Yeah, really.
So
we stay away.
It's better we stay away, so we save ourselves the headache and the money.
I call her the
just
worst
unfortunate because regardless of how badly or well we may have prepared, Nigerians did have hopes in some athletes. Tobiloba Muso, Adekworoye in wrestling, and somehow,
Victor, nearly cannot kill a bird. It's either you kill the bird or you didn't kill the bird. A miss is as good as a mile. That is the standard English for what I just said. A miss is as good as a mile.
All right. Let's thank you now so that you go. Don't miss,
thank me away. I've said what I've said.
Don't miss a cup of coffee. Don't miss a cup of coffee. We'll see you again tomorrow.
God bless you.
All right. Good morning, Nigeria. Our conversation proper begins after this timeout.
Nigeria, a land of rich culture and diverse voices, where every voice matters. In times of disagreement, let's choose dialogue over discord. Together, we can find solutions through understanding and respect. Let's build a stronger Nigeria, one conversation at a time. Dialogue, not protest. Unity, not division. Nigeria, united in dialogue.
TerraQ. Unwrap joy. Unleash taste.
Venture the Nigerian meal you most likely ask to taste before buying. Granuts. Granuts! Job food. The first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Now you see your favor. The last one. We have 2 more siblings. Where's your mommy and daddy? What will you do if you catch your partner cheating? Break up with him. I'll cry. I'll pack my things and leave. Drink. Keep malice. I'll slap him. You were getting ready. Beat him up. Survey says.
Nigeria means a lot to me.
And Nigeria means peaceful cohesion.
My country.
We continue to pray, and then hopefully we will come to understand that unity of purpose, unity of living together.
Our ethnic beliefs and background and culture is our strength.
Ever since the amalgamation period of 1914 to date, about 109 years ago, the people of Nigeria live very peacefully with one another.
I think diversity helps a lot to enhance robust development in Nigeria.
All over the country, you have so many ethnic groups, over 250. That is enough to tell you that this is a blessed country that, that God has kept, together as one indivisible entity.
Thanks for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And just before we begin our conversation on strategic communication, let's take this background report.
Conflicts rage globally, fueled by misunderstandings, miscommunication, and mistrust. But can communication hold the key to unlocking peace? Experts say strategic communication is crucial in conflict resolution. It's not just about talking, but listening, understanding, and adapting to the needs of all parties involved. Nigeria has faced its share of conflicts, but strategic communication has played a key role in resolving them. Initiatives like the Niger Delta Dialogue and Borno State Peace Initiative have brought together community leaders, government officials, and civil society organizations to address grievances and find common ground. Experts also say effective communication has helped Nigerians understand the root causes of conflicts and address them meaningfully. Continuous engagement, active listening, and adaptability are key to sustaining effective communication and achieving lasting peace. Guests join us on Good Morning Nigeria as we examine the way forward in maintaining effective strategic communication in conflict resolution. Can Nigeria's experience serve as a model for global conflict resolution? Stay tuned to find out.
Many thanks, Ibrahim Dan Hamidou, for the background report. We have 3 gentlemen joining us in the studio for this discussion, and it's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Ike Niliaku, the president, NIPR, Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. You're welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Nigerians. Thank you.
All right. We also have with us Professor Umar Pate, the Vice Chancellor, Federal University, Kashere, Gombe State, and he's also the President, Association of Communication Scholars and Professionals of Nigeria. Many thanks, Prof.
Good
for
morning,
joining
Nigeria.
us. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, and we also have here joining us Brigadier General Sani Kukasheka Usman, former Army spokesman. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much for having me on your program.
So let's begin. I think it makes sense. Let's begin with you. And you know why.
He's been resolving conflict in the theater of war.
So tell us, what do we know about strategic communication and conflict resolution? what's the ideal situation, and where that ideal situation is absent, what are the likely consequences? And then you may want to also chip in if it's better for that strategic communication to come before the conflict, so that we are not talking about resolving the conflict.
Yeah, actually, so many questions all at once, but at the starting point, actually, you have to understand what do you mean by strategic communication. And strategic communication, in simple words, mean deliberate and purposeful and sustained communication measures aim at influencing perceptions. And it has so many components, in the sense that it's a planned effort to ensure that stakeholders are carried along, and that cannot be done without knowledge of who are those stakeholders. In terms of issues of conflict, you look at what is the conflict all about and who are those involved. To what extent will you use communication to, and to ensure a better understanding through timely and accurate information. And issue of responsibility also come into play in terms of communication, in the sense that there are some extraneous variables that you tend to highlight. Take, for instance, what are the common goals and objectives as against those things that divide the people. What are those common things that unite them? So these are the issues. And of course, if you fail in strategically communicating, you end up escalating the conflicts, and the consequences is better imagined than stated. So basically, that is how it is.
All right. Thank you very much for your opening remarks, Brigadier General Kokasheka. Now let's get to Dr. Niliako, to tell us, from your own standpoint as the president of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. He's spoken to us as someone who's been, in the field, trying to handle conflicts. But tell us, as a public relations specialist, what really is strategic communication, and what is supposed to be its targets?
Okay, well, since General has given it from the perspective of definition, let me illustrate what strategic communication means to the person out there. You have a community, and suddenly crisis erupts, and they approach somebody in the village that they believe that he has a voice, he's respected, and he knows how to speak to people. And this person happens to be the communicator in the village. The first thing this person does is to find out what is the source of the conflict. What information is available to the parties to the conflict? What does he think would help to ensure that this conflict is resolved? What channels of communication would he deploy to ensure that the conflict is resolved in the community? What should be the message to party A and party B? Sometimes he may discover that the message for party A may not be suitable to party B. So he determines what messages, in this case, would fly. Then how should he engage with them to ensure that he earns their respect? Then what are the feedbacks that he should expect? That means he designs a feedback method of getting their responses, and then reprograms to go back to them. In other words, strategic communication is that communication that takes into consideration available information, causes of challenge, determines the channel, designs the message, delivers the message in the most appropriate way that it can be understood, and then have an effective method of receiving feedback, and then redesigning or reviewing the message if need be, So it's a chain. Strategic communication is not an event. It's a process.
Indeed, if it's not an event, it's a process. It means that you have to start when you begin to sniff that there will be conflict.
Strategic communication cannot happen, especially in conflict, without intelligence. That's where we have failed. Because strategic communication is anticipatory in outlook. And I keep telling people, there is a difference between strategic communication and effective communication, and even responsible communication and development communication. These are different variables. Once it becomes strategic, you must have information. And for you to have information, intelligence is key. Because in fact, before I even come to after, it pays better to be preemptive in understanding what the issue. So in a situation like Nigeria, the strategic communicator by now should know the possible areas of conflict, possible areas of misunderstanding, even possible areas of misinformation and disinformation, and then anticipate the parties that play in such areas, and then design a way to play the game so that they will not be ahead of him. Once they are ahead of you, you are reacting. It's no longer strategic communication. It becomes reactive communication. And the challenge is that for a strategic communicator, you should be proactive. And being proactive means you should be anticipatory. That will help you to design your message. I give you an example. Let's say S.K. Usman is appointed Chief Press Secretary to so and so. Just an illustration. And it is that day he begins to engage with those in the media. No, that cannot be strategic. He ought to have engaged with people in the media 2 years ago to build a relationship so that when his message comes, he knows the right medium to be used to communicate his message. How to? Because every organization must have its own culture. So the culture that works in NTA does not work in AIT, does not work in channels, does not work in TVC, does not work in Arise, does not work in Silverbird. But you see, the person who is a strategic communicator should therefore understand these platforms, these channels across board, and then determines how to relate with them because there is a relationship.
From what you have said, Dr. Neliako, strategic communication is completely lacking in Nigeria. If you want to look at, how we have handled things, how government, especially let's look at government and the people now. Strategic communication, I don't think that from what you have said, it has actually played out. We have seen it in the light that you have put it. But let's pause you there and, hear from Professor Umar Pate, speak to us about strategic communication. You've heard from the Brigadier General and, of course, the President of the NIPR. I want to find out what's your own view about this term, strategic communication. And then it will be much simpler, if you give us examples, just the same way Dr. Nilako has given to us, just so that, those watching can understand properly.
Okay, thank you. Good morning once again. We have had some aspects of theoretical definitions of what strategic communication should be. We have also had a bit of explanation from the NIPR president. Let me also try to give you some kind of contextual explanation of what strategic communication should be or ought to be. Now, first of all, we are relating it to conflict, not to some other situations. So let me give it from the perspective of conflict. You need to understand that in any conflict situation, or conflict rather, starts from the mind of an individual based on perception. What perception means is having an understanding or making sense of the signals that you encounter through your various senses. Now, if you are to engage in strategic communication, it means whatever message, verbally or non-verbally, that you are going to design to achieve an objective must aim at addressing the perception of that particular individual. Therefore, strategic communication must have a clearly defined source who is credible, must have a message which is acceptable, and must have objectives. You don't simply design messages without having objectives. What do you intend to achieve? Is it that you want to capture the heart of an individual, the mind of an individual? Do you want to provoke him? Do you want to excite him? Do you want to push him or mobilize him towards a particular direction? Or what is the intention in that message? So intentionality and the credibility of the source matters a lot. Then of course, next is you choose the channel. The channel to address a minister or somebody who is in government may not be the same channel you can use to achieve the same response with somebody who is down there in the village. So your channel must also be picked based on relevance, based on directionality, and based on what you intend to achieve. Then of course, you have to identify the receiver of the message, and you must be time-bound. Within what particular period of time do you want to achieve this objective and send the message? And of course, the next one is feedback is extremely important. You must know the progress you are making in the course of your journey. Is this message that you are sending bringing in some kind of backlash that you do not intend? Or is it helping you to make some progress? And don't sometimes assume that the communication you send today will achieve immediate, instant response. Sometimes it could start from negativity to move to positivity. Then, of course, you must understand the context. Communication does not take place outside of a context. It takes place within a particular defined, the context could be psychological, it could be geographical, it could be physical, it could be whatever. And if you are taking a country like Nigeria, you must have a very good situational understanding of Nigeria. A country of more than 230-something million people, a country of multiplicity of diversities, pluralism and whatever. We differ on almost everything you can think of except in our humanity. Then, of course, the kind of leadership that we have, the kind of political system that we practice, which is federalism, the kind of economic system we have, and above all, how we are united in our hardships and the difficulty that all of us are experiencing. You have to do this contextual analysis. And in all of this, what will be the nature of communication flow? And who is going to deliver the message? And you have to be extremely careful that you do not have so many speakers that they start contradicting each other, like we have experienced in the past in this country. Because the danger is people are going to have a multiplicity of understanding, there will be confusion, and they will also now create their own sense of understanding which is completely different from yours. And this is also where a vacuum can be created for a miscreant or for somebody who may have a message that is completely destructive in nature but quite attractive. And don't forget, this is the era of post-truth, this is the era of digital communication, and this is the era of not only AI, but generally of multiplicity of channels with scarcity of attention. So we have to be extremely careful. It's not just, communication can appear simple and be taken for granted, but by the time you start harvesting the backlash and the negativity of the consequences of bad communication, you can now understand that, yes, you ought not to have gone that direction.
Now, if we take all of these on board and maybe fuse it with that of Dr. Ikeneliako with the general, do you agree that communication should also come with some level of intelligence? Should it come a bit more preemptive?
Let me not talk like a security expert, which I am not. Let me not say intelligence. Let me say situational analysis.
Situational
analysis.
He talked about
intelligence.
Preemptive.
Somebody in the
Situational
DSS
is already here with us.
Listen, somebody in the DSS can talk about intelligence. Somebody like me who is in the classroom, I don't talk about
I
intelligence.
was coming there.
I talk about situational analysis. So that is where we differ. Just like you in the news, in the studio here, you interview. In the DSS Secretariat or police, they interrogate. But you all do the same thing, basically, getting information. So we all have our terms and tactics which we use. In communication training, we don't talk about intelligence for me. I talk about situation analysis, have a good understanding, whether you call it intelligence or you call it whatever, is a differentiator. It's just a matter of semantics. So now going back to our own situation. First of all, as a leader, you need to understand that communication is reversible. Once it goes, you cannot withdraw it, just like a bullet. If it goes, you cannot withdraw it. Which means you have to think, package, and get a credible fellow that can release the information. And you don't take people for granted. In your communication, you need to have a sense of empathy. Put yourself in the shoe of the receiver of that message. Don't just sit in some coveted office, enjoying all the privileges of life, and then release messages thinking that every other Nigerian is enjoying the same kind of privilege that you are also enjoying. The other Nigerian may be at the lowest ebb of the societal ladder, experiencing all the difficulties and all the challenges, and will have nothing to lose. So you must have a sense of empathy in the process of designing and delivering your messages. Simple way of releasing your messages and your own nuances and non-verbal appearances can make a sense. Don't forget, in every communication act, verbal is just about 30%. 70% of it is non-verbal. They look at the kind of lifestyle you are living. They look at the way you spend money. They look at the other things that surround your own personality. And then here you are telling them about tightening their belts for your stomach to remain fat.
But Professor, you have also mentioned the fact that the multiplicity of channels may be distractive.
Yes.
Not,
but all the same, so understandability is a function of perception, and perception is the way people make sense. If, as I'm seeing you, are looking beautifully dressed, looking fat, looking robust, looking happily in the context of today's Nigeria, and here you are telling me that I should continue to sacrifice permanently, and I could not see any light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel continuously extends without any hope. Then at the end of the day, your communication will not make sense and have impact on my system. So communication must go with empathy. Don't forget, even in propaganda, there is element of truthfulness. When you talk of credibility in communication that can be believed is built on 4 factors: truthfulness, relevance, dynamism, and of course, I'll remember the 4th element. So there are 4, and once they are lacking, no matter how much you pontificate, no matter how much you preach, no matter how you talk, people can simply listen, but they will not internalize the message. They will not believe in you. Belief has a scale.
Fantastic, Professor.
Prof sent everybody into writing mode.
Exactly. and I was going to say that students of communication should be watching this program, because, I mean, this is all you need to, pass whatever exams you want to write if you're a communication student.
Know whether
well, thank you so much, Prof. Thank you. I want to get to Brigadier General Sani Usman Kukasheka now. Some very valid points Prof has made about, effective communication. But I know that is not the way, someone from your own background. We want to look at effective communication, because for you, maybe the show of force, for example, is a way to send a message. You may not want to be empathic, like he has said. You may not want to show empathy because you feel, well, you've got something to use that would shut the people down. So what's your own take in response to some of the points that Prof has made about how communication should be in terms of being effective?
Well, I think let's start from what you are saying about students of communication. Professor Pate is one of the best communication experts in the world. So we are blessed to have him not only in the program but in Nigeria, because it's a mobile encyclopedia when it comes to that issue. So I'm not surprised. All of us here are his students and will remain so. So what he said is quite right. But then if you look at what I said about the whole essence of strategic communication is a deliberate, purposeful, and sustained communication aimed at influencing perception. And at the beginning, he made reference to the fact that actually, even conflicts, it starts from the mindset of an individual or a group. So the whole essence of strategic communication is to influence that mindset. And like you rightly said, sometimes it is not just the communication the way we know it, verbal communication. Sometimes it involves actions or inaction. In fact, there were instances that said some of them, I put it on 80 to 20%. By not doing something, you are communicating strategically. Because sometimes they expected you to do a particular thing and you refuse to do. You are sending a message. So when you relate it with the show of force and the use of channels, and it is not just using the normal communication channels we know. Sometimes visitation is part of communication, strategic communication, in the sense that, and I give instances, sometimes when you have new commanders in an environment, a formation, a GOC, you see him paying courtesy call on the state governor, on the traditional rulers, and so on and so forth. He is communicating strategically in the sense that a new man has come and exploring ways in case if there are things, these are the way. So when issues of show of force come into play also, there are a certain group of people, possibly the language they understand, it is not just an appeal, but to show that in case you do this, we are there. You are sending a message. And communication, strategic communication played out in our counter-insurgency operations in the Northeast. Initially, the nomenclature for the operation, it started with Boyona and the rest of them, but eventually it becomes Zaman Lafia, Operation Zaman Lafia. But eventually, 2015, it was changed to Lafia Dole. Initially, it was more or less emphatic and appealing and all the rest, but now...
You may want to break down what Zaman Lafia means.
Yes,
Lafia Dole.
yes. Literally translated, Zaman Lafia is more or less like to live in peace. It's kind of entreating the people that we should live in peace. But when it was changed to Lafia Dole, you are being...
by force.
Instantly, that, look, we must live. So you are unequivocal. But the message, strategic communications there is more or less to the adversary. That there is no two ways about it, that the military were determined, or the security forces were determined to enforce peace, whether you like it or not. It's against the situation. Remember that they have coveted certain structures, calling it a caliphate and all the rest. So now that you are sending an unequivocal message that that thing has to stop. So you are communicating strategically. And you will relate that with the show of force that you are talking about.
Well, when you say to the adversary, the average Nigerian will say that's not always the case once you talk about security operatives in the country in terms of communication. Because once the average Nigerian sees a military man, for example, on the road, let's assume it's election day, or let's assume there's something about to happen, and you see a military man, or you mistakenly find a truck owned by the military on the road, the message is clear. So I don't know, tell me, how can that be different? How can it carry some of the contents that Prof has talked about in terms of effective communication? Why will an average Nigerian not see a truck of the military on the road and feel just normal that, I could still do what I want to do and be safe?
That is why the context come into play. And you just cannot communicate strategically without research. You are without being deliberate about it. If it is communicating strategically, it must be purposeful, it must be deliberate. So by you seeing a truck, hypothetically the truck that you're saying, unless if it is a mistake, it's also passing a message. But then the message, it could be that in certain instances, there is, if you look at section 218, I think the military can come in aid of civil authority. And there are several instances where they assisted in logistics. It is not just the military. In fact, National Union of Road Transport Workers, help the electoral process in ferrying, electoral materials. So let's assume it is for that purpose, because just like Air Force does, because there are certain areas that are inaccessible, maybe you need a military truck. But beyond that, except of course it is transporting troops for reinforcement when things escalate. But beyond that, no, it shouldn't even come into play. So what I'm trying to say here is that you communicate either verbally or not verbally, either through action or inactions. And in these instances, you sit down. If there are situations, especially in complex situations, what message are you sending across so that people will have a sense of belonging? If, for instance, because we have had instances even, there were accusations and counter-accusations against the security forces being partisan and non-partisan, especially on the plateau and what have you. But they have come out time without number with certain instances that they have been impartial. It's just that the other side do not understand what is going on. And it is your duty and responsibility to remain, impartial professional by communicating, the right message, sending the right signal. Just like the professor has said. Now you are telling me that we need to work hard, when in real sense, by mere looking at you, you do not belong to the class that I belong to. Because when we look at your wristwatch alone, is my income for the whole year. So what do you know about what I'm going through? So these are the issues. So it is not just the issue of, communicating, but you have to communicate effectively. But at the same time, you have to select your words. You have to select the channel that you are going to use. Because in most instances, take for instance, if you are communicating to people in the rural area, you don't go to, with due respect to you in NTA, go to television station. The most likely channel, possibly it could be radio station. And sometimes it is not even frequency modulated, but you have to go to medium wave and all the rest, because sometimes the FM is not accessible in the rural area. So these are things that, but at the same time, again, you have to, it's sustained in the sense that there is a feedback mechanism. You might think that you are doing the right thing, but unknown to you, you are hurting the sensitivities of the people, that they will not even take that message with, the expectancy you have. So basically, these are some of the issues. And in most of these instances, we have to look at it in the sense that, is it a mistake or is it a deliberate thing? So if it is a deliberate thing, sometimes, and of course, in most instances, there is this responsibility of not doing harm. You are thinking you are doing the right thing. At the end of the day, you are aggravating the situation.
All right. Thank you, General, for your input so far. Let me come back to Dr. Neliako. Is communication a one-size-fits-all kind of thing? Is it the same general teaching that you have in the classroom, or even at the professional level, let's say with the NIPR, that can make you spokesperson, for instance, for the Nigerian Army? The same person can also become spokesperson, let's say, for the NTA. The same person can also be spokesperson for, say, the CBN. Is it the same thing, or are there specialized trainings for individuals? Or is it when you get into a particular role, you now adapt that this is where I am now, and there has to be a way of communicating differently in this position than if you are communicating for, proper corporate communications?
This is a very important question. But before then, I will go back to a question that yes, asked. She said, or rather a statement, she said, from what has been said, it would appear that strategic communication is lacking. That has not been answered. So I would like to chip in on that before I go to your question. I don't think that strategic communication is lacking in Nigeria. I don't think so. And I say so across board. What is lacking is the content, the right content for strategic communication. And I say this with respect to the way we have seen things in the last 1 month, you will discover that where information is not available, you cannot communicate strategically. So what may be lacking is adequate information, be it from the communicator, be it from other players that are supposed to feed the communicator for him to now design the message that is supposed to be communicated. That's what I think is a challenge, because when the communicator does not have the right communication, he begins to guess what to say. And when you begin to guess what to say, you will see that confidence is not there because the message has not been properly articulated. So I'd like to respond to that. Then, is every communicator suitable for every environment? Yes and no. Yes.
Now I'm confused.
Nobody will give you a definite answer. You know why? There are basic principles that you must learn as a communicator. And our professor will tell you this. There are basics. Now, after you have acquired the basic knowledge as a communicator, the basic knowledge, the basic experience in the field and in the classroom, okay?
But how do you acquire, I'm sorry, how do you acquire the experience? Because it brings us back to job hunting. How do you acquire the experience if not given the opportunity?
By reason of what you have done before.
You have to be given the opportunity to do it before.
No, you are talking of situational issues. He talked about situational analysis, which we call understanding the operating environment. All right?
Okay.
I mean, that the fact that I have worked, for instance, as the communication director in NTA means that I must have acquired some basic knowledge and experience. You are now sending me to go and become the chief communicator in, let's say, Nigerian Customs Service or even Nigerian Army and so on and so forth. All right? But for the fact that every organization protects itself by ensuring that it is their own that communicates for them. But for that fact, I can tell you an intelligent communicator can fit into any environment and communicate intelligently, strategically, and effectively because the concept is one. What he needs is to understand the operating environment. The environment has changed. The way you were communicating in oil and gas is no longer the way you ought to be communicating for the Nigerian Army. Are you telling me that if an oil and gas company calls on SK Usman and says, come and be our director of communication, that he will not fit in? He will fit in very well because the principles are already there. He has acquired it by reason of what he has done. The only thing is for him to now realize that he's no longer in the theater of war.
That realization,
hold on. So
that realization, would take him a lot because
it won't take him a lot.
The body language he's using to communicate for the Nigerian Army would definitely be different from that he would use when he's communicating for an oil and gas firm.
Remember that we are
the language, the terms, the terms.
No, before you come in, sir. Before you come in, remember that we are discussing strategic communication. Let's remember where we are. Strategic communication. All right? That's the subject matter. So we're saying that you can move from, okay, will you now tell me that somebody like Professor Pate cannot fit into communicating anything strategically?
You already said he's world's best, so let's exclude him from this conversation.
It could be his world's best. It could be the world's best in classroom. But he now has all the ingredients, the knowledge. Look, let's face it in simple man's language. Strategic communication must give you the 5 W's and the 1 H. What is it that you want to communicate? Where do you want to communicate it? Which is the channel you want to use to communicate? When do you want to communicate this information? where, and how, and who is to do the communication. That is strategic communication. By the time you have answered these 6 questions, it means that you are communicating strategically. So you can carry it to any other place, but you must study the operating environment.
Thank you, Dr. Nedaku.
I think I should add a word or two to what he has just said. First of all, in strategic communication or in training people or in assigning people responsibilities, there are 2 important things you need to understand. In communication training or in communication practice, there's what we call the tangibles and the intangibles. The tangibles are what we teach you in the class. This is how to interview, this is how to do this, this is how to raise your voice and maintain eye contact. These are the tangible things. But then the intangibles are the experiences you acquire, and you must respond to a particular situation. If you're in the army, if you're in the police, if you're in this, they have their own cultural nuances. Now, the intangibles are 1. Things like overcoming your own personal biases. There's nothing that is called complete objectivity. All of us, we have our own biases in one way or another. But have you been able to understand personally what your personal biases are? And then how do you consciously overcome them in the context of your operations? Then the issue that I've raised earlier on about empathy. You must have empathy. If you are in the army, you know their own culture, you know their own command structure. If you are in, let's say, a newsroom, you know how liberal and social the newsroom is. So you cannot carry the culture of the newsroom and straight take it into the army system. You must have that empathy. If you are relating with somebody in the village, you should understand his level of thinking, his horizon of understanding, and then come down to his level. If you are this and that, there is one thing about communication. Communication is passage of information. And what is information? Information simply means uncertainty reduction. If I ask you now, tell me the contents of my pocket, you're not informed about it, you don't know. But if I pull out a pen, say this is it, now you are informed. So you are certain about my pocket having this. So the same thing, if you are communicating with the people, what, are you misinforming them, malinforming them, disinforming them? Because this is why information does not have the word opposite. Whatever you give can be misinterpreted, can be interpreted the way that particular person understands it. So the understanding could now be your own misunderstanding. Therefore, for you to package message and send it out, it needs a lot of thinking. You don't just take it carelessly and assume 230 million Nigerians of 230-something, 40-something, different ethnic groups, different religious, multiple political orientations will understand your message the way you intend that they should understand.
Now, Prof, from what that you have said,
yes,
about what effective communication, strategic communication should be, despite all this knowledge, and I'm sure that it's not just with you alone, a lot of Nigerians are aware of all this, yet we still get to see all kinds of conflicts in this country.
Yes. Because we mismanage our diversities, we politicize our differences, we religionize our issues, and we ethnicize what ordinarily should be something that should not, for obvious advantages of particular individuals. And wherever you mismanage diversity, wherever you religionize, ethnicize, and politicize issues, the consequences of conflict are inevitable. And they will continue to occur so long as we have refused to learn from lessons in other places and from our own context.
Do you think these factors that are responsible for conflicts are deliberate? Do you think that
whether they are deliberate or not,
do you think that there's a segment of society of Nigeria
who
are pushing for this?
It may not necessarily be deliberate, but it could be one issue of ignorance and the tenacious insistence on primitive accumulation of capital through corruption, which results in some people always remaining disadvantaged and some people gaining advantage at all cost. There's naturally going to be conflict. When you want democracy, but you don't want to practice the inconveniences of democracy, then you are bound to have all this of conflict. When you take religion and promote it to a level that it should not be, and assume that this is how it should be, and when you also ignore other people's wishes, when you insist that there must be singularity of thinking among the general popularity, listen, even during the time of the prophets, there was no unanimity of opinion complete, which means democratization gives opinion of differences among people, and those who are leading must take this into cognizance. And so long as corruption remains in this country, all these things will continue to occur, because the little resources available, people will use whatever means for them to access it legally or illegally, so that they could have advantages. And once they have these advantages, they try to oppress others, and then the others will react. And reaction is what we see as conflict, coming in different dimensions. And don't forget, the entire world now is in transition. Energy transition from fossil to green, communication transition from digital, analog to digital. It's also political transition from military or from authoritarianism to democracy. So everything is in transition. And transitions usually come with inconveniences, with sometimes conflicts that must be properly managed. Even as an individual from bachelorhood to maybe becoming a father, sometimes there could be some conflicts. A woman from maybe transiting from being to other side, there could be some level of inconveniences. So how do you manage these conveniences? I mean, these inconveniences. That is why leadership matters. Of course, there will always be difficulties in life, but how do you manage these tensions that individuals come across? Where you fail because of your own individual interest, or you are more concerned with about yourself alone. You only think of your village. If you are in the in some parliament, you think of your town alone. You think of your people alone. You think of yourself alone. Then the others feel marginalized. They feel rejected. So for them, there's nothing to lose. And then the kind of communication you give out, you don't empathize. You now come in a very commanding structure, ordering people. And because of the multiplicity of channels now, the government or public media no longer have monopoly. The conventional media no longer have monopoly of dissemination of information. So there are multiple channels, just like there are so many quacks masquerading as journalists, pretending also to be sending out information, and people believe in them.
In other words, there is body language plays a significant role in all of this.
You see, credibility. Credibility in communication is very, very important. Just like I told you earlier on, credibility means truthfulness, competence, relevance, and dynamism. Who is that person giving you the information? Is it the person that has been taken to court, shown to the whole public that has stolen public resources, now is in leadership, and is the one telling you to behave well, when he has gone to court to get permanent injunctions?
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Patti. Now, there's one area I'm surprised that nobody has talked about. It's a very common word thrown around in Nigeria, being diplomatic. Nobody has directly used the word diplomatic. Professor Patti came close to it. He didn't quite say diplomatic. But again, the word diplomacy, the way we use it sometimes here, means, to put it mildly, that you must have the ability or capacity to color the truth, or, leave out some things here and there, or say some things. Is this the case, General?
Diplomatic. And
when you hear people say you have to be diplomatic, it's oftentimes people mean, oh, you should have left some things out. Is it everything you say? So is it the capacity to color the truth?
Well, I don't think so. The whole thing is that when we were talking about strategic communication and in the context of conflicts, you just have to say the truth, even though it might be painful. But of course, at the same time, you have to take into cognizance the context, the cultural, and the level of understanding. There are certain things, for instance, that if you are told, you could have behaved otherwise. But then the way they say it also will make you to do the right thing. And that is why maybe you are talking about this issue of diplomatic. Just like they used to say that there is a difference between telling someone that he's stupid and telling him, don't allow me to call you stupid. They mean the same thing. So basically, the way you put it is equally very important. And you cannot do that unless you are knowledgeable, you have a fair idea of the people you are dealing with and what you want to achieve. So we go back to crafting of messages during, strategic communication in complex situation. How do you craft the message? Is it empathic? Sometimes lives were lost. And you tend to claim that you are right and all the rest. You have to be empathic simply because lives were lost. Because we have had instances in the process of communication, they will say only one person died. How many do you think that should die? So these are the issues. So it's no question of it's just
come to think of it, Brigadier General. No, but yes, I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you because because it's on this particular issue that he has mentioned. Because we've seen it even amongst media professionals where lives are lost, or maybe there's huge damage, for example. They leave out those details because they tell you, oh well, the nation will go on flames, will go on fire if you inflame the nation if you say a certain number of people died. Instead, just say some lives were lost, or in fact, just completely take that out and go ahead to talk about other issues. Is that the way to go in terms of strategic communication? Because we see that play out a lot.
Okay, let me take it from this.
You did not allow me to land, but
okay. Okay, do I go on or you want to?
Let him land, then of course you would respond.
Well, because the way you interjected, in fact, it reflects back to my experiences, especially when I was Director Army Public Relations. There were instances, actually, the military suffered heavy casualty. And, it was a very dicey and difficult situation because delicate balancing in the sense that sometimes when you come out and say it the way it is, you will send people into panic. There was an instance, a newspaper came out with a story that soldiers were not paid allowances, so there will be pandemonium in the northeast. And what happened? It's just a story of two soldiers that went on a war, got messed up somewhere in Yola, and the journalists took advantage of them. They were disgruntled and all the rest. They started talking. And I received so many phone calls, even from Kano, that if that is the case, they are relocating to Lagos. So you see, if you put that in that context, but then again, you look at what happened in Gudumbali. Therefore, it is equally very important to tell the truth, in the sense that in any case, just like we know we have multiplicity of channels and sources of information are many. If you don't tell the truth, eventually if you are found out, the credibility that is your currency in being a spokesperson or an institution will be eroded and people will no longer trust you. So these are the issues that there is always need to be truthful, to be accurate. But just like I made reference to that issue of calling someone stupid and don't allow me to call you stupid. Yes, of course. You might not have the exact figures, so to speak, but you don't downplay things. You have to tell it that, look, we have suffered casualty. We are in the process of getting the accurate data, but I can tell you that we have suffered casualty. Of course, people know that given the tone of your voice, definitely there is seriousness in what you are doing, what you are saying. But at the same time, sometimes even the information might not be accurate because in the process there could be some people are struggling, some people, they are just missing in action, you will still see them. So, but you don't downplay things. At the same time, you don't blow things out of proportion. So basically that is it.
Dr. Nilako, you want to respond?
Yeah, well, not respond, just to chip in a few things. Why as communicators, it's sometimes a bit difficult to pigeonhole us. It's because what Victor is calling being diplomatic has already been captured from all we said here by 5 words. Professor Pate talked about empathy. That's been that thing he called. I talked about understanding your operating environment. That's been Victor's word. We talked here about the language of your communication, that you have to understand the language you have to use. That is Victor's word. We talked about the context of that communication as SK Usman brought it. That's your word. And finally, sensitivity. You must be sensitive when you are communicating. Otherwise, you will lose the essence of the communication. When you put these 5 words together, Victor's question is answered. But if he wants us to call it diplomatic communication, he should come
but
next
how
year.
how then do you get out the truth with all these factors that you have talked about now?
Who is hiding the truth? The truth is very clear. The only thing is that you are being sensitive in communicating the truth. He gave you an example. You are very stupid, and don't allow me to say that you are stupid. One word is central: stupidity. That's by my assessment. Again, for you to communicate what you call the truth, you must determine whether you are talking about facts and calling it truth. Because sometimes truth is relative. Don't let us go into this discussion, otherwise we won't finish today. Because truth can also be relative. And sometimes facts.
Be running away from the word diplomacy.
He has given me credit for a word that existed there.
In communication studies, we are conscious of selecting our words. And the word diplomacy, mostly, which is in the purview of people who are in the foreign affairs and all of that, but sometimes we corruptly use the word in associating it with propaganda. Fantastic. And in another way, by saying, okay, this may be so, but let's look at it from the other way, which may not necessarily be the correct thing. And you use words. That is why sometimes it is said, through diplomacy, you can conveniently tell somebody, go and enter into fire, and he will happily enter into that fire. But for us in communication, it may not be our own way of doing things. We are conscious of propaganda, the techniques of propaganda at different levels. So we all have our own areas of operations, and we have our own terms that we use. For us in communication, we're a bit conscious. And you see, when you talk of this issue of truth you are telling, like he told you, truth could be relative. But because of what we now describe as the era of post-truth, where you have multiplicity of channels, and you have populism in governance, overriding real governance process. When they combine with all this computer logic and communication genres, the consequence is what we are just talking about now. One, a lie can be repeatedly and tenaciously perpetrated to the extent that it becomes a truth for you. Because it comes with pressure, it comes with the 4 V's. Volume, huge volume, just surrounding you. Then it comes with velocity, top speed, that you don't even have the opportunity and the time to verify. And there's no value. Of course, you can't verify because of the amount of content and then the speed at which it comes. So by the time you have all of this, eventually you just subsume and become a victim and trust it to the extent that if the real truth comes, that untruthfulness has already swamped you. So this is the era in which we are. Courtesy of all these technologies, take your telephone set. How many messages do you receive every day? And how many times do you check your phone daily? Please do a survey on your own. One day, just sit down, try to count how many times do you check your phone? How many messages have you received on Instagram, on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on this, on that, and sometimes on the same subject? So, and also check if you have had the time to verify the value of what you are just checking and the truthfulness of what you are checking. So by the time you don't have all of these things, the truth simply becomes something that you can't differentiate where the truth is and where the lie is.
Thank you very much, Prof. We need to go on a break. When we come back, the conversation continues. Stay with us.
Of Nigeria warns vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
Meet lovebirds Jayola and Adama Davies. Their dream of living together as man and wife has finally been fulfilled.
The latest couple in town, Mr. and Mrs. Giant David!
But an invasion by their troublesome families was not a scenario they bargained for. Her mother moves in. His mother shows up with his little niece. Then her younger sister joins the scramble.
You want to stay?
Married life suddenly becomes very complicated even before it started. Follow their story on this channel as they confront every challenge as it comes. Family forever, the story of our lives.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. Today, like one of our guests has mentioned, we are in a lecture room. Let's just say that the studios of the NTA is being used as a lecture room because we have, professors, doctors, and of course a Brigadier General with us. I said professors because you're a professor of professors, so you know what that means. And of course a doctor of doctors, being the president of NIPRO, of course, and Brigadier General with us. But, let's get back to the conversation. So much about strategic communication. And, when I mentioned to Dr. Nilaku earlier that, from what we see in Nigeria, it looks like strategic communication is missing. He well said maybe the information is, what is not adequate, or if you like, not available. And that is why it looks like if strategic communication isn't working. But I want you to look at the few instances we've had in the last few weeks, months in this country. And then, we've seen a lot of reactions or conflicts as a result of maybe policies or, actions or inactions of government and all of that. And at the beginning of this conversation, Dr. Nyaku said, well, a strategic communicator should be able to see ahead to know, what is likely, going to come out of maybe a policy or a decision or an action. Why don't we see that play out? Let's give a simple example, like the NLC issue that, we had a few months back. There was a strike, and we know so much resulted from that strike that could have been prevented, for example. If the needful was done. Where is that gap? Who is responsible for that gap?
Thank
You know,
in
strategic communication in this country.
Thank you very much. Let me not take the liberty of being in a classroom and just talk in general. You see, everyone can communicate. We can all talk, be in government or out of government. We can all talk. God has given us that ability to be able to talk. But then some people go to school to study communication. So you ask, what is so special about going to school to study? So some of us take it for granted that we can talk anytime, anyhow, anywhere, and still achieve some objectives, which is not correct. In governance, there are institutions that are imbued with the capacity to communicate, and that's their business. And they do it very well. It's not as if we have not had successful communication programs in this country. A number of times, things have worked. And up to this moment, some things are still working. So the point is, if you do an assessment of what has happened in maybe some few weeks back, there were multiplicity of sources of communication on the same subject. From some quarters, some people are saying, people have the right, they can do this, they can do that. So it's okay, so long as there will be peace. From some quarters, you had people saying, we know who the enemies are, and we are not going to allow them to succeed. If you know who the enemies are, why don't you just go and talk with them and sort it out? Then in some quarters, you have people who are a bit in the middle. And in some quarters, you have complete denial. And the reality is there. We're not shying away from the reality. And this suggests that when we are confronted with such nationally sensitive issues, we need to plan properly. We should not just take things for granted. We should not assume that Nigerians, or generally the citizens, are just a bunch of people sitting there waiting to receive information and then react positively to that information. It's not like that. And then how do we even release the messages? You cannot sit in front of some beautiful looking wines and some beautiful looking people and then now be telling Nigerians that they should tighten their belts. Even the way you dress, the selection of your words, and even the context, where you stand to talk to them, matters. And again, you must do what we call audience segmentation. You have to segment Nigerians. The message that can achieve complete unanimity or acceptance, let's say in the southeast of Nigeria, among maybe the general Igbo community, may not be the same message that can achieve the same objective in the north. And when you talk of the north, you also need to understand the segmentations in the north. For some people, they understand messages through the religious prism. For some people, they understand messages through their ethnic coloration. For some people, they understand it from their political orientation. For some people, they are young people, exuberant, full of energy, and quite ready to burst. So they understand it through the hunger of their stomachs. So now, as a communicator, you have to plan and understand how do you reach to each of these corners. It's not just by gathering religious leaders. Some people are not connected to them, or by gathering traditional rulers. Some people are not connected to them. And they have their own units through which they understand information. So you need to do a critical analysis of all this mass and then know what kind of wordings. The wordings you are going to use to address a university student will not be the same you are going to use to address a conservative 60-something-year-old fellow. Or the same message you are going to use in Enugu may not be the same message you are going to use in Maiduguri. Nigeria is a complex federal system. So you need to understand these things. And that is why you need to have brains in the Ministry of Information and other places whose duty will be to be doing this kind of research to prepare inputs for whoever that is going to speak to the nation. Then by the time you speak, each person will have his or her own understanding and interpretation of the message that is coming from that source. And then, like I've said, don't take the audience for granted. Don't assume that, yes, they just like complaining. They will always complain. No matter what you do, they will complain. So you just come from that perspective with some pejorative, condescending look on the rest of the citizens. By the time they give you back then you will understand what it means to be at the lower level.
But do Nigerians have the ability to give back if communication is not effective?
From what we have seen and from the reaction that followed from the leadership, it means they know that Nigerians have the capacity, even if they are not exercising that capacity. And that is why we should not underestimate and assume by sitting in Abuja, using the big channels in Abuja, sending messages to Nigeria, oh, please don't fight, please don't cause conflict. Look, there's what you call cognitive dissonance and cognitive consonance in understanding of messages. When what you are saying contradicts what I'm seeing and feeling in my system, I will respect what I'm feeling and dismiss your messages on your radio and TV station. Like, oh, please, everything is okay, you have this, you have that. But on the ground, I have not eaten since morning. I have not had anything in my pocket. I hardly see any end or any hope in the tunnel that continuously extends from years back to death. And you are telling me I should please relax? Look, our young people are missing their milestones. What do you mean by milestone? At the age of 7, primary school, at the age of 18, secondary school finish, at the age of 21, university degree, at the age of 22, 23, maybe an employment or master's degree or a marriage. And today, a student that has graduated for the last 8, 10 years, no job, no wife, no money, nothing in his pocket, and you are telling him, please be patient. Life will be sweeter and better. We are working hard today for your better tomorrow. When is the tomorrow coming? So if somebody asks you this question, how much will you ask? And he sees you buying cars for your children, cars worth millions of naira, building mansions, doing this, doing that, and you are telling him to keep quiet, and he cannot see hope, and you expect him to. So these are things that in leadership, these are tensions that we have to manage. And we do not manage this with anger. We do not manage it with provocation. We manage it with creative thinking.
But you know, Prof, a leader watching you now will say, well, this has been...
I am a leader too at my own level.
At your own level, yes.
Yes.
But you know, I'm just in the political
and
leader...
I'm selecting my words.
Yes, a political leader watching you now would say, well, this has been what has been obtainable for a very long time in the country. And Nigerians have not been able...
transition. The world is transiting from analog to digital. The environment is transiting from fossil energy to green energy. So leadership must also transit from analog leadership to digital leadership with complete sensitivity and acceptability from the people at the lower level. You have just seen what has happened in Kenya, in Bangladesh, in other places, and we're praying it should not come to Nigeria. And for us to pray, we must work
on this issue of policy. I would like to come in briefly on the issue of policy.
I was coming to you anyway.
Because, you see, there is a difference between the policy of communication and the communication of policy. The challenge that we have heard is not about policies. The challenge mostly is about poor communication of policies. And we could see that it has played out heavily. Before that policy is communicated, what happens? And that's why Prof was talking about taking the public for granted, taking the citizens for granted. The policy must be properly processed. And part of processing the policy is getting the communicators involved to know what the policy is all about and asking them to go and design the effective way to communicate that policy. And part of designing the effective way is to also do stakeholder mapping and stakeholder engagement. To now know how to communicate it even before it is communicated. Citizens don't like surprises, especially in an environment where they don't trust their government, where they don't trust organizations. So anything you bring, primarily, they look at it, they have come again. From the perspective that they don't like us, they don't have respect for us. Primarily, until you prove otherwise. So part of the transition is that we must change our communication of policy strategies. We must take a number of things into consideration. It's not sometimes that citizens don't even like the policy. They don't even understand it.
My President, sir.
They don't even understand your policy.
We do not have a functional information policy for Nigeria as of today. Do you know we don't have?
Yeah.
The communication system and the information dissemination system is rudderless. No rudder. This one will talk, and then everything will go. We do not have a policy, and not because we are not supposed to have. One was done since the Obasanjo regime. Some of us were part of it, and up to today is still in the coolers and is outdated today. And what does it take to produce a national information policy that can coordinate the resources as well as collaboration and all of that in the information subsector? In this era, go and check, most countries have it. But Nigeria, we do not. And it's not as if we have it is in the coolers of the Ministry of Information. And today it has died.
Anyway, you said it's outdated, so we have to find another one. But I was going to ask you, Dr. Neliako, how easy is it? Prof had reeled out the different strata of society. How easy is it in one speech, for instance, to be able to communicate effectively with all of these strata? The one who has his pocket full, the one who has it empty, the one who has it half empty, the one who has it half full, all sorts of people. How do you capture all of those? How easy is it in one fell swoop, in one speech?
We gave you the 5 W's and the 1 H. If you use that as a model, you will discover that you'll be able to cut across all aspects of society and then design your message to fit into that, because it covers everything. What is the message you want to communicate? Where is the message coming from?
Who is it going to?
Who is the message going to, and who is communicating it?
The who?
Yes, who is
varied.
it? No, but you see, this variation you are talking about, when you do your stakeholder mapping, you should be able to capture the critical publics you want to address. You should. But you see, when these things are not properly done, you just throw information out there. When you do your proper analysis, your audience analysis, as you call it in television, we call it public analysis or stakeholder mapping. When you do that, you'll be able to know these are the people that I am going to address. And this is how I should address them. And you know what? Today we are emphasizing that communication has become a leadership function. It is no longer something that you do because you want to do it. In those days, you just communicate or you just manage information. It's now a leadership function, meaning that leaders must be sensitive to communication and how they communicate so that they can be helped in what they say.
When you talk about leaders being sensitive to communication, let's
Am I opening another frontier?
No, when you talk about leaders, I want to ask this. Is it possible that because Nigerians understand leadership to just mean being at the center alone, has been the reason why communication has not been effective enough?
No,
because
no.
He
He just told you that he's a leader.
If we had the communication, at the subnational level, like he has said, say for example, somebody in Kano is speaking to the people in Kano, is able to understand their language, is able to understand their needs. Somebody in Edo State, somebody in Rivers, instead of just looking out for one person at the center to speak to all these people, could that be the reason why communication is not?
No. Let's look at it in this context. The man in Kano is speaking for Kano and speaking for Kano audience. The man in a local government in Kano, I think there is Fage. There is Fage local government, for instance, or Fage in Kano. He will be addressing that local community in that local government area. The man at the national level that needs a national audience or national public is addressing the national. So that's why we must understand who our public represents. Because if you don't understand it, you will not be able to use the right bullet. I don't want to use bullet because of SK Usman. You will like to use the right message. You like to use the right message, but all I was trying to say is use the right message, but this message is well packaged and well structured to hit the right target, whether at federal, whether at state, whether at local government. By the way, I have a difficulty with this issue of subnational because it is not part of us. It's not constitutional. Our constitution recognizes states as a second tier of government, not subnational. I don't borrow those things that these guys in the West foist on us and we begin to run with it.
Did they?
We have federal government, we
And
have
the
state
states.
government, we have local government. That is what our constitution recognizes. So when I'm communicating, I need to know who are the people I want to reach. Are they at national? Are they at the state? Are they at the local government? Are they even within the zone?
Well, they're everywhere.
Exactly.
Now, General, let's take the next 1 minute or two to get your your closing remarks.
I think the whole essence is just understanding the fact that when you say strategic communication, you are talking at higher level. And it permits, if I may use a military term, both tactical and operational level. And if we are contextualizing it into the Nigerian context, we are talking about what is it in terms of Nigeria that permit down to states, local government, up to districts and villages. So when you are talking about that strategic communication, it's just a question of having the same aim, the same objective, but the means and how varies. But the most important thing is that if the president is talking, the state governor will be saying the same thing, the local government chairman is saying the same thing. It's just like what they have in the American system. When it comes to issues of national importance, the president is on the same page with the members of the executive, the legislative, and of course with the chief of joint staff up to the rifleman in the trench. That is what strategic communication is all about. So it's having a kind of plan that everybody is on the same page with, that people will understand.
Thank you so much, Brigadier General. Because of time, we have to leave the conversation at this point. But I must let Professor Omar Pate say something in 20 seconds as we round up the conversation.
Please, you know that in the current context, we have some wonderful policies coming from the government, but poorly misunderstood. In the education sector, I can tell you, we have had excellent issues coming up in the universities, for example, and other places, but poorly understood because of communication. So one, we have to make our national communication information policy functional. Number two, there must be collaboration. And number three, there should be some kind of other intangible ways of reaching the people.
Thank you so much, Professor Omar Pate. By the way, I'm coming to register in your school
You're most welcome.
one of your students. All right, Dr. Ike Nyeliaku, President NIPR, thank you so much for being our guest. We do appreciate you. Professor Omar Pate, Vice Chancellor of Federal University, Kashore, Gombe State. I'm sure you'll see more students coming in for admission now. And of course, Professor Oke Okechukwu, Executive Director of Development, Specs Academy, Abuja. Oh, rather, sorry. Brigadier General Sani Usman Kukasheka, former Army spokesman.
I think you have to repeat that. In fact, we were all apart myself, except for the fact that she's at MNI.
All right, Brigadier General Sani Usman Kukasheka, former Army spokesman. Thank you so much for being our guest. We do appreciate you. It's been a very educative, discussion, and I'm sure that, for everyone who watched, it was worth the while. Thank you so much for watching. This is Good Morning Nigeria Today. I'm Ian Ray John.
I'm Victor. We'll see you again tomorrow.